conditions of our effort, and they point to an ideal which can be expressed in these or in equivalent formula. And he is giving you 3 points. Number 1, to live in God. Number 2, to be perfectly equal. Number 3, to act in God. Okay, and then he explains what he means by all that. So, oops, what will happen? Yeah. So these are the conditions of our effort. Remember, because what he is going to tell you, these 3 conditions do not necessarily apply to the other yogas. So our effort, and they point to an ideal, the ideal of the integral yoga. Don't think that it is applicable to everything. So everybody is talking only about integral yoga. These are the conditions of our effort, and they point to an ideal which can be expressed in these or in equivalent formula. Number 1, to live in God and not in the ego. Now that's not an easy thing to do. And to get rid of the ego, you have to make your mind silent, and your consciousness has to rise to the higher mind. And the mind becomes absolutely silent. Then the ego disappears to a large extent. There is still some sort of ego is there. The ego gets transformed into the individuality. They think about it, it's very interesting. There's a whole gradation. There is first of all a gross ego, which all of us have. Okay, it asserts itself all the time, thinks that it is right, others are wrong. Okay, that is the gross ego. Then there is a subtle ego, which is a sattvic ego. You are an ordinary man, but you don't express your ego so prominently. It's a sattvic ego. There are many people who take things in a very calm, quiet manner, but that doesn't mean to say that ego is not there, because ego is that which makes you feel separate from everybody else. Remember that definition. Okay, ego is that which makes you feel separate from everybody else. As soon as you don't see the separateness, then the ego is disappearing. By definition, ego is the one that makes you see multiplicity. So, to live in God and not in the ego. And when he is using the word God, the ideal would be absolutely at the supramental level. But even when you go into the higher levels of the spiritual planes, it is already good enough. You are already living more in God than in ego. Okay? Then he is explaining, to move, vastly founded, not in the egoistic consciousness, but in the consciousness of the all soul and the transcendent. The transcendent begins at a higher mind level, and the all soul. He uses very interesting words. All soul, the one soul that includes all the others. Okay? So, in the cosmic consciousness. Sometimes he uses the word over soul. Okay? Because if you say God, you are imposing your own anthropomorphic ideas on the divine. Anthropomorphic means relating to the human beings. All the human characteristics that we have, we attribute to God. That is the anthropomorphic conception. That if we are happy, God also can be happy. If we are sad, God also can be sad. If others can be bribed, God also can be bribed. Okay, he can be satisfied. All these are anthropomorphic ideas which don't always. There's a vague truth behind all that, but not the absolute truth. So, to move, vastly founded. Move means in the physical world, with body, vital and mind. Vastly founded, not in the little egoistic consciousness, but in the consciousness of the all soul and the transcendent. So, in other words, your spiritual living starts at that level. Second, how to do that? To be perfectly equal in all happenings and to all beings. He has not included events here. Oh, happenings is events, that's right. So, to be perfectly equal in all happenings and to all beings. Beings. He is not talking only of human beings. He is talking about of animals and other things, even trees. Okay? So you have to be absolutely equal. Equal means you are not affected by anything coming from the outside world. The bahya sparsha, the impacts from the physical world entering into you leave you absolutely calm and quiet, not disturbed at all, neither happiness nor unhappiness. And to see and feel as one with oneself and one with the divine. You have to and feel them as one with yourself. You see yourself in everybody and everybody else also is there in you. You feel that they are in you. Sri Aurobindo uses the words apprehensive consciousness and comprehensive consciousness, which becomes absolutely at the highest level in this supermind, it becomes perfect. But you can have glimpses of this even in the lower planes of consciousness. So you have to be perfectly equal to all happenings and beings and to see and feel them. It's not a conception, it's not mental. It's actually a physical thing. To see and feel them as one with oneself, they are all one with you and one with the divine also. To feel all in oneself and all in God. To feel God in all, oneself in all. So he has given you both the apprehensive and the comprehensive consciousness. So let's disengage the two. To be equal to all beings and to see and feel them as one with oneself, one with the divine. Okay, that means everything is in you. You feel yourself to be one with everybody else, but the other one to feel all in oneself. That's the comprehensive. Now you everything is in you and all in God. To feel God in all, oneself in all. So that's the last phrase. To feel all in oneself, you are in the cosmic consciousness where the whole world is within you. Okay? So in the sonnet, if you see there, sonnet he says, the largest stars in the heavens are burning within me. In those days, Srimad used the words Belphegor and I forget the other word. The two stars are burning within me. Okay, so Belphegor and Betelgeuse or something like that. I've forgotten the exact words. So this is one, and the other one, you feel yourself in everybody, one equal to everybody. So comprehensive as well as apprehensive. Then the third one. So first you have to live in God and not in the ego. Second, you have to be absolutely perfectly equal, not disturbed at all, absolute calm and quiet. Next, the action itself. The first is to live in God. Second is to be static in the, and now he says even in acting also, all your physical actions also, in God and not in the ego. And here first, not to choose action by reference to personal needs and standards. Now that's a very, very difficult thing to do. You depend totally on the divine to such an extent that even if you feel that you have to go and buy a piece of soap in the market, it's a personal need. It's very interesting. It goes to that far. You do nothing for yourself. And if you really need it, the divine will provide you with it. That is the faith that you must have. Very difficult to do. Not easy at all.
Concept. When we are doing, sometimes we feel we are calm. When we try to do this, sometimes we feel we are our head is going away or what? Like, are we becoming mad or what?
Yes, it's not easy at all. What we're talking about is the highest. There's a lot of smart
couples. I don't know.
Okay, so this is what he's saying. First, you have to live in God, then you have to be equal, and then you have to even act. All your actions also will be dominated by God and not your own needs. Mind you, not desires. He's even saying needs and standards. Even what you feel you need, that also you depend on the divine. I remember one child in school. They were not from a very good family. And she was saying that all her other co-students are getting laptops and whatnot, and they are coming with phones, and she didn't have a laptop. So she was asking her parents, can I get a laptop? The father said that, I'll try and get you one, okay? But then she realized that she doesn't really need a laptop. It's a desire. I have a book. I don't need a laptop. So she understood the difference between a need and a desire. Okay? So already that's a great step. But here Sundar is not even talking of desire. He is talking of personal need. Even what you need, the divine will give you. Okay, you have to have that faith, and if that faith, even a little bit of that faith is there, actually sometimes miraculous things happen. Exactly what you need comes from strange quarters. It's a very interesting thing. Okay, now I remind you of the Sermon on the Mount of Christ. Okay, he said that when the divine is looking even to the tiniest little wild flower on the hill, okay, it is he who is looking after it. He gives it the color, the life and all. Why should you worry? You are much, much bigger than that. So God is attending to everything. So why should you depend and try to do on your own? It's a very beautiful piece. You can go to the internet and try Christ's Sermon on the Mount. Okay, and you will see that that's exactly what he's saying. That he is looking after even the most insignificant flower on the hill. Okay, and why should he not care for you? That's so obvious. But to believe that is very difficult, and to act in it is even more difficult. Not easy. So I finish the para. To act in God and not in the ego. And here, first, not to choose action by reference to personal needs and standards, but in obedience to the dictates of the living highest truth above us. The first question you will ask is, I don't see what that living highest truth is, so what can I do? So it's a long path, and you have to first of all want it, as Mother says. First of all, you must want it. Secondly, that wanting must be put into an effort, and the effort must be a sincere one, and you call for help and you will get the help. That's a process. I know there's one person who comes constantly to the synthesis class elsewhere, and they go on saying, it is so difficult, it is so difficult. Of course it is difficult. Who said it is easy? Of course it's very difficult, but that doesn't mean to say you won't try. You have to begin. And there was another student who used to tell me, I'm praying so much to Mother, but she does not help me. I said, that is not that at all. She is helping you, but you are not being able to open to her guidance. You are keeping your doors and windows closed. Open them. Then you will get. Receptivity is a very important thing. Just like the radio station, which is broadcasting to everybody. But if you keep your radio shut and don't tune in, you won't get the broadcast. It is so simple as that. The divine is exactly like the broadcasting station. It is helping everybody. You have to open your doors and windows. Okay, so we are always mostly keeping them closed. That's the ego. The ego is when you keep your doors and windows closed. You are limited, seated only in yourself. Okay, I go to the next sentence. Next, as soon as we are sufficiently founded in the spiritual consciousness, note, even in the spiritual consciousness, which is the second level, he is not even talking of the supermind, not to act any longer by our separate will or movement, but more and more to allow action to happen and develop under the impulsion and guidance of a divine will that surpasses us. You become a very, very happy instrument of the divine. You see, in fact, if you read Agenda, Mother is constantly saying, your will, O Lord, your will, O Lord. Constantly she's saying that. And imagine the level at which she is, okay? In the highest levels of consciousness, she's going on even at that time because she's working at the physical level. We are working, not even working perhaps at the mental level, and if we manage the mental, then the vital level. But she was working at the physical level, and not only physical level, at the cellular level. She was each cell in her was aspiring. Okay. Can you imagine the condition which she had reached? Unbelievable. Okay, so but more and more to allow action to happen and develop under the impulsion and guidance of the divine will, that surpasses us. And last, the supreme result to be exalted into an identity in knowledge, force, consciousness, act, joy of existence with the divine Shakti. The divine Shakti is the divine in the world. Okay? The divine Shakti is in the world, but its origin is there in the higher levels of consciousness. But you have to, and what should you identify yourself with? Knowledge, Chit, force, Shakti, consciousness. Okay? He uses the word consciousness very often in the sense of Sat also. Act, even the consciousness and joy, Ananda. You must identify yourself with all Satchidananda. To feel a dynamic movement, not dominated by mortal desire and vital instinct, and impulse and elusive mental free will, but luminously conceived and evolved in an immortal self-delight and an infinite self-knowledge. Okay. Now, I go back to, very interesting, he used the word mortal desire. Now, why is he using the word mortal? Desire would have been enough. But there can be a desire which is also spiritual. No? Aspiration is a spiritual desire. So that would be allowed to begin with. So to feel, see the accuracy of the words. To feel a dynamic movement not dominated by mortal desire, ordinary desire, not spiritual desire is aspiration. And vital instinct and impulse and elusive mental free will. You think you are free, but you are actually not. But luminously conceived and evolved in an immortal self-delight. The immortal self-delight is Ananda, which is not dependent on anything, immortal. Our pleasures are mortal delight. They are born and they die. But this is immortal self-delight and an infinite self-knowledge. For this is the action that comes by a conscious subjection and merging of the natural man into the divine self and eternal spirit. It is the spirit that forever transcends and guides its world nature. Now note also natural man. That which is a part of you which is natural man? Your body, mind and life. Because you have also a soul in you. You have other things also in you which are you have to reach. You are a 7-storied building. You are living on the ground floor. You are the natural man. But you have to also realize that there is something deep inside you and also above you. So that's what you have to do. You have to take your consciousness out of the lower floors and go to the higher floors. That's what he's saying. This is the ideal of the integral yoga. Right? Now the next is, but how do we do this? It is so difficult. That's what he is telling you how to do it now. Practical advice. Shall we read the next one? Yeah, it's not a very big para, we can read it. Huh? But by what practical steps of self-discipline can we arrive at this consummation?
Shall I read it?
Go ahead, Yasmin.
But by what practical steps of self-discipline can we arrive at this consummation? The elimination of all egoistic activity and its foundation, the egoistic consciousness, is clearly the key to the consummation we desire. And since in the path of works, action is the knot we have first to loosen, we must endeavor to loosen it where it is certainly tied, in desire and in ego. For otherwise, we shall cut only stray strands and not the heart of our bondage. These are the two knots of our subjection to this ignorant and divided nature, desire and ego self. And of these two, desire and its native home in the emotions and sensations and instincts, and from there affects thought and violation. Ego sense lives indeed in these moments, but it casts its deep roots also in the thinking mind and its will, and it is there that it becomes fully self conscious. These are the twin obscure powers of the obsessing worldwide ignorance that we have to enlighten and eliminate.
Yeah. So he's telling you how to do it. practical advice. Not easy, but still it is a practical advice. Okay, so we have to first become by what practical steps, okay, not theoretical steps, practical steps of self-discipline can we arrive at this consummation. By the way, I have said earlier also, but I am repeating the word consummation. Okay, it's not the when you write only SUM, the total of a sum. Okay, it's sum. Okay, so here also it is consummation is a noun, and the verb is consummate. And what does that mean? To complete something successfully. Consummation. Don't get confused with consume. The infinitive of consume is consumption. You consume food, an industry consumes raw material, that is consume. But this is consummation. Practical, the satisfactory completion of something. So, self is telling you how to do. The elimination of all egoistic activity and of its foundation. So, obviously, the first thing is we have to realize that we have an ego, that we are acting egoistically. So, the first thing is to recognize the ego, and that, even that is not easy. I was just reading in one magazine today, which I get from somewhere. I subscribe to quite a few magazines here and there. So, in that magazine, one person in the West from America, he said that I never realized that I had an ego. And the ego is not necessarily, mind you, this is very interesting. Don't think that the ego is always expressing itself in arrogance and self-aggrandizement, okay, and thinking yourself to be greater than others. No, ego can do the opposite also. Ego can make you feel very, very humble, very, very modest, very, very even inferior. Inferiority complex is a negative ego. It is ego. Don't make a mistake. Okay. Oh, this fellow is so humble and so self-effacing. He has no ego. Wrong. Because I told you, the ego by definition is the sense of separateness. You feel yourself to be separate from everybody else. The other things, arrogance and sense of superiority and dominating over others, these are the results of ego, not the ego itself. And everybody has a different ego. In one letter to Niruddha, Shiva is writing, your ego is grey and squat. So maybe it has even got shape and color. So there can be a tall ego and a fat ego and different colors, whatnot. So the first thing is to recognize that you have an ego, and that itself is quite a job. Okay. Then we have to see which part of our mental decisions and vital decisions are coming from the ego, from desire. The moment it comes from desire, then you know that it's ego acting behind it. Okay. So these are the practical things that he's telling you. The elimination of all egoistic activity and its foundation, the egoistic consciousness. So the egoistic consciousness is the one that makes you feel separate, the sense of separation, limitation, and that translates itself into individual egos. The egoistic consciousness is universal, the sense of separation, ignorance, and that makes you enters into each one and gives you an individual ego, which takes a form and shape, is clearly the key to the consummation we desire. If you want to live in God, act in God, and be absolutely equal to everything, you have to get rid of the ego, number one. And since in the path of works, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, action is the knot we have first to loosen. We must endeavor to loosen it where it is centrally tied in desire and in ego. So, desire is easier to recognize than ego. But even desire, sometimes we can't distinguish between need and desire. You feel that you have a need, but the two actually merge into one another. Sometimes even needs are coming from desire. Okay. For otherwise, we shall cut only stray strands and not the heart of the bondage. This is an interesting thing. Because when you, let us say you have a desire for food. I take a very gross example. You have a desire for food. You pray, 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 and the desire for food goes away. Does it mean that desire has gone away? It doesn't. It can migrate to other things. Then it can migrate to clothes, or it can migrate to you are wanting success in the world. It's a very subtle thing. So don't think that when you've got rid of one thing, okay, your desire has disappeared. That's a very important thing to understand. So that's what Sridhar is saying. If that happens, you are only cutting stray strands. The one strand for food you have cut, another strand for clothes you have cut, another strand for success in your ventures you have cut. No. You have to cut everything. Desire itself at the root has to be cut. Okay. I think in another place he says, it has to be uprooted from its bleeding roots. You have to, it's not an easy thing to do. Okay, you have to uproot it from the bleeding roots. When you pull it out, there'll be bleeding. You'll have to suffer at the beginning for a little bit.
These lines are from Savitri.
Yes.
He tore desire up from its bleeding roots and offered to the gods the vacant place.
That's right. That's right. I don't remember the exact line, but the bleeding roots leaves a tremendous impression on one. You can imagine what happens. It is so difficult to do. Okay. So we shall cut only stray strands and not the heart of the body. These are the two knots of our subjection to this ignorant and divided nature. Our nature is divided. We have a mind, we have a body, and we have a vital, all feeling to be separate, and also we feel ourselves to be separate from everybody else. There's a divided nature. Divided nature, seeing the many. And what are they? Desire and ego sense. These are the two main obstructions to a spiritual life. And of these two, desire has its native home in the emotions and sensations and instincts, and from there affects thought and volition. So mainly the desire is in the vital, because if desire is not there in the vital, there will be a lot of problems. The life has to sustain itself. And how can it sustain itself without taking input of food? So desire has to be created. Okay. So nature creates things so that it can prolong itself. So desire is absolutely essential for bringing you out of the tamas of matter and vital. Then it makes you active. But when you have gone beyond that need of activity, then you have to get rid of desire. This is the problem with everything that nature is making. Okay? Even it creates dirt, it has got a function in the world. Tamas also has got a function in the world. Desire has got a function in the world. Ego has got a function in the world. Every time you go to the next level, you are getting rid of the things that helped you. Ego was the helper, ego is the bar. Mind is the helper, mind is the bar. Okay? So this gradation, I keep repeating that this gradation we have to understand. Okay? Then he's saying, ego sense lives indeed, and of these two, desire has its native home in the emotions and sensations and instincts. So even he's including the animals. Even we also have instincts, but the instincts are most prominent in the animals. And from there, affects thought and volition. The word volition is clear. Volonté, the noun from to will. Willing, the noun is volition. Okay. Volonté, very similar to French. The ego sense lives indeed in these movements, but it casts its deep roots also into the thinking mind and its will, and it is there that becomes fully self-conscious. Ego becomes fully self-conscious in the mind. When it is there in the vital, you are often not conscious of it. The animal doesn't recognize that it is a desire and an ego. Many human beings also, I told you just now, article I read in one of the magazines. The man is saying, I was very, very shy and very, very sensitive. I used to feel hurt very easily. I never imposed myself on others. But I realized later on that it is ego. So, ego is a very subtle thing. It can be negative, it can be positive. Okay? These are the twin obscure powers of the, mind you, obscure powers. It's a power, but it is obscure. Okay. Again, Sendo is very, very fond of using words which seem to be contradictory. Okay. Normally we would say power is good, but Sendo says power is obscure. Okay. Savitri is full of oxymorons, opposites combined. Makes a huge amount of sense if you get the meaning of what he's saying. These are the twin ego and desire. Obscure powers of our obsessing worldwide ignorance. Okay? It obsesses you. You are absolutely under its domination. And note, worldwide ignorance. The worldwide ignorance is there, the sense of separation is there even in the universe. Okay? When mind divides itself, it creates division and separation. That we have to enlighten and eliminate. So, elimination of desire and ego, not the easiest of things, and it goes on for a long, 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 long time. When can you say that you have absolutely removed desire and ego? Only in the supramental. There is, in fact, in another place he says about ego. First of all, there is a gross ego. Then there is a subtle ego. Then, when you get rid of that and go to the spiritual place of consciousness, there is a spiritual ego. And what is a spiritual ego? You can also say that, not in its gross form, but that was, what is the difference between ego and individuality? If you see, the true individuality replaces the ego, and yet there is a sense of individuality. Individuality necessarily means that you are slightly different from others. Okay? For instance, when you are having the cosmic consciousness, okay, someone is experiencing that consciousness. That is a true individual, not the ego. But it's a form of ego. It's an ego which has diluted itself and become vast. So, very difficult to get rid of it. And sometimes in the spiritual planes of consciousness, you can get rid of your individuality. But if you have to live in the physical world, you have to create an individuality which is free from ego. So therefore, I think I told you the other day, very interesting story of how Ramakrishna used to live a harmless desire so that he could pull his consciousness down into the physical world and remain there. Because the physical world is the world of multiplicity, not of unity. So although your consciousness is largely sense of unity it has, yet if it has to work in the physical world, you have to anchor yourself to the lower levels. And anchoring can be done only by a desire or an ego. So slide, very small ego or desire has to be created so that you can anchor yourself. Okay? So, yeah. Shall we read? We have got 10 minutes, 12 minutes, we'll read one more.
Shall I read?
Yeah, do that. In the field of action.
In the field of action, desire takes many forms, but the most powerful of all is the vital self's craving or seeking after the fruit of our works. The fruit we covet may be reward of internal pleasure. It may be the accomplishment of some prepared idea or some cherished will or the satisfaction of the egoistic emotions, or else the pride of success of our highest hopes and ambitions. Or it may be an external reward, a recompense, entirely material, wealth, position, honor, victory, good fortune, or any other fulfillment of vital or physical desire. But all are alike allures by which egoism holds us. Always this satisfaction deludes us with the sense of mastery and the idea of freedom, while really we are harnessed and guided or ridden and whipped by some gross or subtle, some noble or ignoble figure of the blind desire that drives the world. Therefore, the first rule of action laid down by the Gita is to do the work that should be done without any desire for the fruit. Nishkama karma.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting para, not only from the spiritual point of view, but even from the language point of view and the expression. Because I told you, it's a very interesting exercise to look into Srinivas's language and see how he uses metaphors and similes. Okay, Savitri is full of metaphors and similes, but so also is his text. And here also there is one, and I'll ask you to identify the metaphor and see its application to the subject that he is dealing with. Okay? So, now, but that's towards the end of the para. So I don't know if we'll be able to manage it for about 10 minutes. We'll try. In the field of action, desire takes many forms. But the most powerful of all is the vital self's craving or seeking after the fruit of our works. When we do something, we always expect success. So that is what he's saying. The fruit of our works. Karma phala. That's a word used in the Gita. You want your karma to end in a phala. You want a success in your action. So the most prominent is the vital self's craving, not the word craving, it's not, or seeking after the fruit of our works. The fruit we covet may be a reward of internal pleasure. If you are very subtle, yeah, okay, internal pleasure. Good example is, I do charity works and I get internal pleasure. I am very satisfied. I have done good work. I have done this. I have done that. I have helped this person. So it can be a internal pleasure. Nobody else knows about it, but you are enjoying that. It's an internal pleasure. It may be the accomplishment of some preferred idea or some cherished will or the satisfaction of our egoistic emotions. All these can be internal pleasure you will get. You want a preferred idea. I have an idea, but all ideas have opposites which are equally true. But your preferred idea or some cherished will or the satisfaction of some egoistic emotions. These are all the internal fruit it will give you a reward. Or else the pride of success of our highest hopes and ambitions. Note that. Okay, even that is fruit of action you are wanting. Okay. Okay, when we are fighting for India's freedom, okay, all of them, they want success. That also from the yogi point of view, not is an imperfection. When you want the success of your action. So what do? You have to act without wanting the fruit of your action. So difficult. Not easy at all. Okay. The fruit that we read, or it may be an external reward, a recompense entirely material. That also, that's very gross. Okay, you want wealth, you want to do business and you want wealth, you want success, you want position. There are many people who want position. We have had very interesting examples even in the ashram. Okay, honor, victory, good fortune, or any other fulfillment of vital and physical desire. There's one person who always wanted honor. Okay. I must get Sahitya Academy Award. I must get Padma Shri. I must get Padma Vibhushan. Okay. They really tried for it. Okay. Sara has got now Padma Shri, but I don't think she tried for it. I don't know. But she's quite close to Narendra Modi, I heard. And she has been awarded the Padma Shri because of her work in the educational field. The Srinivas Ashram Delhi branch runs a integral school which is quite well appreciated in Delhi. I think it is second rank or third rank in Delhi. It's very popular, more than 3,000 students. So anyway, so that is the external reward. You want wealth, you want position. Many people fight for position. They want power. Honor is enough. Okay? Victory, good fortune, or any other fulfillment of vital and physical desire. But all alike are lures by which egoism holds us. Your highest hopes and ambitions also need not be spiritual. Okay, they can be desire for fruit of action. And note interestingly that if you don't have desire for fruit and action, your effort will be very diluted. When you want something very badly, you will put in a huge amount of effort. But the huge amount of effort is right. But the wanting the result is, spiritually speaking, not right. But from an ordinary point of view, absolutely valid. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So he said, now we come to that. I'll ask you to unravel the metaphor. Always these satisfactions delude us with the sense of mastery and the idea of freedom. All these ideas of satisfaction and success is actually giving you, is fooling you, because you feel that you are, when you succeed, you feel, I've been able to succeed, I'm a master of that. And the idea of freedom, I've done it with my own free will. But these are all delusions. While really, we are harnessed, guided, ridden and whipped by some gross or subtle, some noble or ignoble figure of the blind desire that drives the world. Now, 4 words. You are harnessed, you are guided, you are ridden and whipped. In the physical world, which is a situation where you are harnessed, guided, ridden and whipped? That's a metaphor.
Chariot. Chariot. Horses and a chariot.
Yeah, either even a bullock cart or a horse or a chariot. That's right. The animals are harnessed. They are put to the, they are joined to the yoke, and you are guided. The animal doesn't have any guidance of its own. It is guided, told to go left or right. It is ridden. You are sitting on the animal, and you are whipped also. This is what desire is doing to you, and you feel that you are free. So see how Sri is saying, all the while you are a slave. You are nothing but an animal, and desire is sitting on you and whipping you into action, and you feel that I am doing it on by my own. So look at the language and the way it is, it becomes so graphic. So harnessed and guided and ridden, they ride you. They sit on you and ride you. Whipped, not only that, but whipped. A desire, when it enters into you, I have that problem, okay? When a desire enters into me, I have to realize it. If I postpone it for one day, next day again it will come. It is whipping me. So difficult to get rid of it, not easy until you finally satisfy the desire. Then you feel, So, whipped by some gross or subtle, mind you, it can be gross or subtle. Even noble ideas are ego and desire ridden. Okay? The highest levels. Sri Aurobindo realized that when he was fighting for India's freedom. Okay? In the Uddarpada speech, he admits that. He says that when I was fighting for India's freedom, there was this ambition of success. Okay? And that I am doing good work for the nation, not for myself. It is not ego, but it's a desire. Okay? And then he says, I realized that God is doing everything, and who am I? So he was told to go away to Pondicherry and sit quietly. Don't worry, this work will be done by others. That's all. In the Uddarpada speech, it is there clearly. So, first he says that we have to work for mankind, humanity. Later on he changed it and said, no, we don't have to work for humanity or mankind, we have to work for God. Okay? Therefore, the first rule of action laid down by the Gita is to do the work that should be done without any desire for the fruit. Nishkama karma. There should be no desire in the what you are doing, do to the best of your ability, but without expecting the desire. Not at all an easy thing. As he says afterwards, a simple rule in appearance, but how difficult to do. We've got 2 minutes. I can't do the next para, but we'll do it next time. Okay. So, a very interesting para where he is telling you the way to get rid of your ego and desire, nishkama karma. Try to do the best you can without expecting the results. Leave the results to God. Karmanyeva adhikarasya. You have got right only to karma, but the fruits thereof belongs to the divine. Ma phaleshu kadachana. You don't have the right to the fruits of the action. The divine may decide that I won't give you the fruits, I'll give it to somebody else. That's what happened now. Sri Aurobindo and so many others fought for India's independence, and yet the credit often goes to Gandhi and Nehru, which is absolutely, now it is being proved that that is not the real thing at all. Okay, so we stop here today, 8:40.
Bonjourne Rangada.
So I say